Trump is angling for even more tariffs against China. What can China do to soften the blow? A Chinese costume drama has taken the country and Asia by storm. How does Qing Dynasty palace intrigue capture a modern audience?
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Since China-U.S. trade spat began in late March, the two countries have imposed 25% more tariffs on each other's products worth $50 billion. U.S. companies and members of the public have until September the 6th to submit comments on the proposed duties. Some say that such an imposition would mark a major escalation between the world's two largest economies. The trade war has already prompted Beijing to take a more meaningful easing measures. Earlier this week, China's State Council said it would adopt a series of measures, including the establishment of a comprehensive legal system and a unified regulatory system for the bond markets. For more, with us in Beijing studio, Mr. Liu Qiao, a professor of finance and dean of the Guanghua School of Management from Peking University. Professor Liu, welcome to our program.
It's my pleasure.
First question to you, sir. How vulnerable is China's economy as it's already become a focus of world attention? Professor.
If you talk about the situation now, I think one single word is that the economy is slowing down. If you look at the first half, economic figure, the growth rate has dropped to somewhere around 6.8%. GDP growth rate has been around 6.8% in the first half of this year. But if you look at, for example, investment rate, it has dropped to, I think, 5.5% for the first 7 months of this year. This is the lowest point since 2001, since we have this this figure. And consumption actually has growth has dropped to below 10%.
We have seen the central bank recently taking the action, trying to suggest in a way that China is not manipulating its currency at all by using a new method of looking and taking care of its currency. Professor Liu, is this one of the ways that China is trying to make sure the rest of the world understand that China is not a currency manipulator and pave the way for a bilateral negotiation with the United States if there is going to be further negotiations?
The meaning is twofold. I think the first, on the one hand, what we are saying is definitely right. I think the Chinese government, the central bank, wants to send a very strong message that China is never a currency manipulator, and the so-called unfair trade has nothing to do with currency manipulation. I think that is one meaning. And I think on the other hand, I think one of the messages we can get from this policy stand is that I think the trade dispute between China and the U.S. just indicated that we have our own structural problems within China, and we're going to work on those structural problems. And I think the foreign exchange policy is not going to help too much on that front. So we want to work harder, make extra effort to take care of the problems we have identified, to ensure that China can move from this high-speed growth stage to high quality in the development stage.
Professor Liu, one of the things it seems that the dispute between China and the United States when it comes to trade is helping us to identify, as you just said earlier, about China's own weakness or potential weakness in its economy. But this also coincides with some of the other factors, Professor Liu, you know better than I do. First of all, China is trying to deleverage. That has been done over the past 5 quarters, and certainly it's going to have some impact on the economy slowing down of the growth rate, for example. Meanwhile, the slowing down of the growth rate does, in a way, have an impact on all sectors of the Chinese economy. Plus, we have what's going on, the U.S.-China trade dispute, not necessarily having a real impact on the Chinese economy, but certainly influencing the confidence people inside China and overseas have about the potential of this economy. Professor Liu, when all of these factors twisted and entangled together, what really does it mean for the potential?
We have to change our economic growth model. I think in the past 4 decades, China actually has relied heavily on investment rate because we're eager to complete the industrialization process. So therefore, I think the financial system itself provides a lot of credits to ensure that a high level of investment rate is possible. I think we have some statistics showing that in the past 4 decades, the average investment to GDP ratio in China has been somewhere around 40%. That is very high by any standard. The problem is that after China has almost complete the industrialization process, the investment return has dropped. We're talking about 2 drivers of economic growth. One is investment rate, the other one is the rate of return, investment return. When you do not have a very high level of investment return, if you want to maintain a very high growth rate, the only lever you can rely on is investment rate. So in the past, we're seeing that the central bank, in terms of monetary policy, in terms of fiscal policy, we have pumped a lot of credits into the economy to maintain the investment rate. Therefore, we are suffering from these high leverage problems.
Right.
But right now, if we still want to keep a relatively high level of growth rate, we are going to go back to the old growth model again, relying on investment rate.
Well, as you said, Professor, it's not necessarily the most important factor for the Chinese economy. Really, our vulnerability is coming from within the economy rather than from the trade itself. But one has to point out, if China is having this trade dispute with the United States, with the other side also suffering, U.S.
Yes.
But China also has its own problems as a result. For example, where to look for alternatives of global supply chain, where to look for alternatives for the global market if the United States is not necessarily the biggest option anymore, Professor?
We cannot continue to rely on the investment rate anymore. Therefore, we have to identify new growth engines. And I think it's getting very clear where the growth engines will come from. I think it will come from better allocation of resources. So you need a new breed of companies, a new breed of entrepreneurs. And I think on that front, how to promote entrepreneurship, how to promote the development of SME sector, private sector, become, I think, the key challenge here.
Yeah.
So I think if we can somehow figure out some ways to make this happen, I think we can break this cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, Professor Liu, the real estate market.
Yeah.
If you look at the Chinese economy over the past few decades, real estate actually plays a very important role in boosting the growth rate, at least, and also to make sure where the destination for those investments are.
Yeah.
But that, of course, has led China to a lot of problems as well.
Yes.
China has decided to tackle those, but now with the growth rate coming down, very likely real estate will come up again. If you just look at the market price of real estate projects these days, whether it is for housing or for business use. So are we going to repeat that once again? It seems to be a very convenient choice.
This is my concern, actually, yeah. I think you're definitely right. The U.S. market has been one of the very strong pillars of Chinese economic growth. In some sense, I think it provides the growth engine, and they provide the revenue for local governments, so they can make a lot of infrastructure projects available, possible. But I think the problem right now is that we have some estimation about 50% of the debts are somehow associated with real estate market, either upstream, downstream, and housing price itself. So I think if you really want to deleverage, right, you really want to make sure that you stop relying on credit field investment as your growth engine. You have to deal with the problems of your real estate market, your housing price. As I said, this is a challenge. Right? I think not everybody will be happy about what is going to happen, but if we continue to pump a lot of money into this market, for sure we can maintain very high investment rate. Our growth rate will come back, but again, the structural problem will be worsened off.
Forever getting China into that trap, as you just mentioned,
yes,
Professor.
Right.
But on the other hand, you talk about stability. Stability is important. Happiness is important. If you look at the current situation of the Chinese society and the Chinese system, how they work. So when all of these issues being handled, you also have an issue of inflation.
Inflation.
And that is going to address the biggest concerns for the common public.
Yeah.
So all of these has to be pieced together,
Yep.
and it has to be much lesser pain than what we had during the 1990s when you have the reform of state-owned enterprises, because of course people these days will not be able to take that anymore. So Professor Liu, this is an unprecedented challenge, I would say.
The only problem is that after 40 years of high-speed growth, we need to think about the new growth engines. I think that those new growth engines are actually out there. And we do have a lot of supportive factors within our economy which can sustain its future growth, future development. You have to think about how to recover consumers, entrepreneurs, maybe everybody's confidence level. And that will be the key area to think about your package of policy initiatives.
Do you have any suggestions about that confidence building?
Well, I don't believe monetary policy and fiscal policy will do too much. I think if we continue to rely on macro policies such as more credits, more government spending, I think we're going back to the older road. We're going back to the old growth model.
So what is the solution then?
On the macro foundation level, I think a couple of things I can think about. For example,
right.
Number one, you can think about how to increase households' income level. Because of a high housing price, I think in some sense the mortgage has crowded out a lot of consumption at a household level.
That's right.
So I think controlling housing price and increase household income level will help consumers to consume more.
So you're talking about tax cuts? Is that what you're saying?
I think individual household tax rate definitely can be cut. There's huge room out there. If you look at the first half, the first half of this year's figure, I think the total tax from household, from income tax, right, is only about 8% of total fiscal revenue. It's not that high actually. Yeah, if you cut it half, you still have 4%, right?
Right.
So I think there's huge room out there, but it's going to provide a huge boost to the confidence level of the consumer.
So that's one?
I think that's the first one. The second one is about I think SME and companies, especially for SMEs, because traditionally they do not benefit too much from booming financial market. But SME actually contribute about 80% of employment in China. So how to support this sector is very important. I think, maybe in terms of value-added tax rate, a lot of discussion on that front. If we can drop that, reduce value-added tax rate from 16% to somewhere around 11% and maybe 12%, that would be a huge boost for SMEs, for private sector to make more investment.
Before we go, Professor Liu, there's also the issue of what is the potential internationally. Now we know unilateralism could be this problem, and we also know international trade system evolving. We also know that China, as a rising power, has been proposing its own remedy to the rest of the world about the next growth engine. For example, the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. For example, what China consider as so-called future of the community of shared future. All of these, though, could take quite some money at the initiative stage, at least. And therefore, the question is where the money come from, and will these visions be necessarily implemented for the longer benefits of all?
I think China's structural reform will definitely help achieve the mission, value proposition of BRI and other internationally proposed ideas. I think everybody agrees that the globalization is entering into a new era. I think we need a new framework for global governance. I believe that China's success in the past 4 decades provide a very good case example. We're not saying that China actually is a perfect model for other countries to follow, but I think at least it provides some kind of alternative way of thinking about how a nation with a huge amount of negatives can develop, can solve a lot of problems in such a short period of time. And I believe those kind of lessons, those kind of success factors can be leveraged in a much wider, much broader scope. So that is the initial idea of the Belt and Road Initiative. But I think in the meantime, we realize that the China story is not ended yet. So I think this is a very perfect opportunity for us to demonstrate that how a nation, on the one hand, it is able to develop its economy, solve its own problem. On the other hand, when it faces new problems, new set of challenges, it can learn how to rechange, how to reform, how to continue to upgrade this process. I think this actually is a very good opportunity. So I believe that if China can successfully deal with its internal problems, we deepen our reform and we think about how to reshape our macro foundation, making sure that the investment return can be improved. We identify the new growth engines. Those will provide new blood, provide new materials for those international initiatives you just mentioned.
Well, having a great start is certainly half of the success, but the capability of reincarnation is probably even more important when we talk about the long term. Professor Liu Chao, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program today. A Chinese costume drama has taken the country and Asia by storm. How has this Qing Dynasty period piece succeeded where others flopped? You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. A Chinese costume drama has gone viral across the country and probably even beyond the border, attracting about 5.6 billion views since its release last month. It's also garnered the greatest ever overseas fan base for a Chinese series. Before we find out how this kind of drama hooked so many people and what's really behind its fever, let's take a look at this.
The story of Yanxi, a 70-episode drama exclusively shown on iQIYI, has gone viral across the country. According to an online ticketing and statistics provider, the drama has attracted an average of over 130 million views per episode. The series tells the story of how a wise and resourceful young palace maid becomes the master of Yanxi Palace and is ultimately promoted to be the highest-ranking imperial concubine, mother of the future emperor. And the online drama is spreading even further. It's now available in more than 70 markets globally. Hong Kong TVB recently bought the distribution rights for the show in Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, and Malaysia. Similar distribution agreements have been made with TV channels and platforms in South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. However, the success of the drama is not an accident. Immense efforts have been put into its production. The costume design in the drama, in particular, has been lauded by many viewers. Based on historical documents and antiques housed in Beijing Palace Museum, all of the adornments are created according to the preference of concubines, and some are even intangible cultural heritage pieces.
For more discussion on the popular Qing Dynasty costume drama that is attracting so many fans from here in China and around the world, we are joined in Beijing by Professor Teng Jimeng from Beijing Foreign Studies University. Professor Teng, what a pleasure to have you. He, of course, is a freelance movie critic and cultural commentator. Also joining us here, Liu, Executive Vice President of Dinsen International Media. That's a company that's producing TV dramas here in China. Also joining us on the phone, we have from Riga, Latvia, Mike Bastian, professor of Southampton University. We're going to talk to him a bit later in the program. But first of all, wow, 5.6 billion, Professor Tong. Have you ever seen that number before?
That's phenomenal. No, never before.
Yes, have you watched it?
I watched some part of it, and I couldn't finish all of them. I'm too busy.
So it's a 70-episode TV
Right.
drama. You
Right.
know, it's hard to imagine how people follow from episode 1 to the last one, but actually a lot of people do. What is really behind this? Explain to our international viewers, particularly Professor Tang, what's really behind this?
Well, first thing first, I think the Chinese audiences have been loving this kind of historical pieces, especially costume pieces that look beautiful. I mean, you have to be beautiful to be watched by, to
If
be
we
loved
could
by.
play how beautiful they are,
Oh,
some
yeah.
footages of, you know, the TV drama itself, our viewers will have a view of that. Like,
So it is designed to be lovely, beautiful, and so designed to be binged watched. I mean, you watch all these, basically, almost all the episodes, because now they're on iQIYI. And so, in this case, it was the exotic location, like the location we have back here, and also the beautiful costumes. And lastly, I think this very scheming...
I hope we could play some of those footages to let people see how beautiful they are. If the producer is listening to me right now. Okay, what about for you?
I really like the story itself. It's so different than other TV dramas I have seen before. It's especially the protagonist. She's so different. She has that tit-for-tat personality in that TV show, all the way from episode 1 to episode 70. It's just, you know, magnificent.
So the young viewers like infighting. The court infighting, the infighting among all these concubines and low-ranking servants, so that they can eventually elevate it up to the very impressed dowager sort of thing. And so it's all about fighting from the lower level of the ladder, up to this very higher echelon of power.
Probably you guys, as cultural critics, could have your views, but what about those who have been involved in the producing of this drama, some of the actors and actresses? In fact, we talked to some of those through social media, the story of Yanxi Palace on our Sina Weibo. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
Hey everyone, I'm Jiang Zixing, who's Mingyu in Yanxi Palace. I'm so glad that you like my work. To see more story behind the scenes, please log on World Insights with Tian Wei, 10:15 p.m. in CGTN.
Great advertising. Yeah.
She's very sweet, of course, talking to our viewers. She is playing one of those working in the palace, in fact. But Professor Tang, you know, you've seen so many dramas depicting that part of history, and yet people wonder why this one stands out. You talk about the personality, you talk about the costume, but it seems that it's a lot of things putting together that made its success.
Well, I think once again, I mean, it's because the infighting, which is so very symbolic. It was a very symbolic act of the Chinese history and also of a larger Chinese society. I mean, the infighting maybe at the workplace, at the in the society in the large, or perhaps in the family. And secondly, I think it is also very much in terms of a historical piece that which may tell us about the history and tell us about the true history which is going on. I mean, although some part of it is fictional, but then the characters are vividly portrayed and also acted out. Some of the very interesting part of the human nature.
Ms. Liu, it's interesting because in it, you see so many stories that actually correlate with what's going on today. Anti-corruption story, for example, it's inside, right?
Yeah.
You got so-called foreign invasion, or you got wars in the border. That's also one of those stories you see a lot in the headlines of international news these days. You also see a very strong personality as the emperor as well, and also how the court system work. In fact, the old traditional emperor system works in the Qing Dynasty, which is the last feudal dynasty in China.
Yeah.
And you see how people dress, how people talk about, and how people interact with one another. This is so-called traditional, ancient, but it's so modern as well.
Yeah,
you know, some of the things that's going on then, culturally speaking, also relevant today.
So personally speaking, I really like this drama because it's not only about the aesthetic, like the overall great, magnificent look. The production value is so great. You can just get so much from the costume design, and you can also learn the Qing Dynasty history from that TV show. Another side, I think, you know, added to Professor Tan's point,
The food,
yeah,
the clothing, the lifestyle in general,
part,
right? The cultural part of it is very interesting.
But there's one question about that. In fact, what is actually in the story are not necessarily historical facts, according to most of the versions of history that we've been reading. It's not based on real history, but rather a dramatization version of it, some of the personal relationship as well. And the people, how they speak, certainly in the TV drama, is not necessarily at all how people spoke then, but people are still fascinated by this apparent, as you said, historical facts. They want to look for relevancy today, about today. And they all want to look for the continuity of Chinese culture. They're curious about this. So Professor Tang, it's rare to see how one cultural piece, one cultural product, would actually satisfy all these curiosities about people today.
I think it's very hard.
That's an interesting point, isn't it?
Right. It's very interesting as well as challenging. I think I admire the producers of this very episode, of this very, very series. I think it is great revival of the traditional Chinese costume, the clothing, the food, the court etiquette, and also the general lifestyle that can offer to the rest of the world. I mean, this could be a classic example of Chinese soft power. I mean, we offer the world in terms of our great history, our great lifestyle, which had been so very popular back at the time. But of course, I mean, we are also offering some kind of self-critique. I see lots of concerns out there because...
Like what?
I mean, for example, it's all about women. I mean, women being inferior, women being struggling to survive and thrive in a very patriarchal society dominated by men, because every woman have to win and curry for the favor of that very emperor. The father of this general society, the patriarch almost of the universe.
Right. That is certainly one thing I would assume as a female viewer of that TV drama you might pick up.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like the producer and also the director put a lot of feminine touch in that leading role, which I really like, and I believe other audiences are having the same feelings like me.
Feminine touch. Exactly what are you referring to?
So, like what I said in the TV drama, when she loves someone, she would tell the person, and I think it's one thing that in traditional TV dramas we don't see, but in this particular one, we have it.
So characters are more expressive, vocal, articulate. I mean, this is a woman who is very, very bold in terms of expressing herself.
But of course, that is not part of the history at all.
And it's not. And that's
it's not.
And
that is, it's fictional, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
So the question is, this has been asked for a long time about historical drama, so-called, whether it's based on historical facts or not, whether that matter or not. We see that not only with Chinese ones, but also with the international TV dramas as well. Whether, coming from the UK or the United States, some of the dynasties are certainly beautiful content for later manipulation for the story. But what do you make of that? Are historical facts really matter?
I think it's a matter of fact that it's the foundation to build up a story, and especially when as a film producer or as a producer, when you submit your content to SARFT, you need to respect that history. So we, as creative minders, we would have that as the foundation, and then story is the key.
I don't think so. I think art needs to be really fictional, and art needs to be creative and innovative. And so in this sense, you can fictionalize some person, but then that person must, in a sense, carry the qualities or perhaps features that resonates with the contemporary audiences, like, now in China and in the rest of the world. I mean, resonance to me is important.
The other thing that you just both mentioned is the personality of the heroine, who is supposed to be the owner of the Yanxi Palace. She is actually the one with a lot of personalities, cut the crap, showing her love for people, and be able to speak out at times. But at the same time, she's pretty cunning in a way. And she knows how to work in a system that women are being still suppressed. And yet she managed, according to this drama, get to where she wanted to be. Yet when she got there, she already regretted in a way, because she also thought she deserved a better and more truthful life. So this is the complication, I guess, people have about one's life as well. But the question is about that too. what exactly are people picking up, especially young women like you, Ms. Liu, from this drama? Are they, in a way, understand that this is all fictional? Are they going to take what is inside the TV drama as a way to deal with people and deal with the system or the environment that they are having today in China? Of course, these are very different from what's going on in the dynasties, but still, are people taking those as tactics ABC for the office?
It's a great question, by the way, and in our office we discussed that every day.
Oh, you did?
We did. You know, for young people, because a lot of people in our office are quite young, and what we like to discuss the characters this person has is basically she knows what she wants at the very beginning, and she works that goal until the end. So. As a hero, we see that journey she developed for us, and the other points that we love about the content is that for young generation, we know what we can do and we fight for it. She did that in that drama as well.
Professor Tang was having a little bit of reaction over there. What about the words he just said?
I think it's too hard. I mean, our time has been too hard on you, on your generation, and the Chinese millennials. I think it is very hard in terms of getting a secure job. I mean, the main problem is the lack of security, the lack of the sense of security. And so you look up to these characters, but then be aware of that very character who actually try to act out the worst part of human nature. I mean, by using some of the most conspicuous and also scrupulous methods.
So-called shortcuts.
Right, shortcuts. This woman actually, in a sense, could possibly provide a bad example. I mean, and bad example means bad influence. I mean, I believe hardworking, our generation's believe in industry and hard work.
I understand, Professor Tang, you are teaching American literature and culture in your university. I'm sure this will be part of the discussion when your new class of students are coming onto the campus. But we're going to talk about that a bit later. You know, it is not just the Chinese who are interested in this, but also, you know, the overseas audience, what kind of elements they are picking up from so-called historical drama like these. For example, back in 2015, the U.S. media giant Netflix introduced another Qing Dynasty palace drama onto the United States market. The company condensed the 76-episode drama Empresses in the Palace. It's called Empresses in the Palace, into a 6-episode miniseries. Take a glance at the trailer.
A young beauty will have a chance at everything she's ever dreamed. But
this drama depicted a young girl's coming of age in the Qing Dynasty palace, full of backstabbing and scheming. It was a phenomenal drama back then. It was so popular in China that its quotes were everywhere on China's social media. However, when it was re-edited and introduced onto the U.S. market, the U.S. audiences were critical, rating it only 2.5 out of 5 in the U.S. and 1 out of 5 in Canada. Some say the condensed version spoiled the story, but others say it's not just that attractive to an international audience. Of course, this is only part of the story we are hearing, but Professor Tang, this is an interesting phenomenon, that what is actually attractive to China's domestic audience, some of those could really lost in translation, literally and non-literally. Well, at the same time, what the Chinese are looking for in the cultural products might not be necessarily the things that the other audiences from all over the world are looking for. Of course, the other markets are also very different from one another, Professor.
I mean, this is basically the crucial point that we have to discuss in spreading out and communicating the Chinese culture overseas. I mean, one thing that I think we need to avoid is what we call the cultural specifics.
Yeah.
And cultural specifics actually refer to, for example, details in our history, some of the very detailed part of the history. For example, how does the court system works, and what does an emperor in a sense, say, and what are the manners of this very court etiquette. And so avoid cultural etiquette, make it universal, tell a general story about human nature, about this inner workings and infightings, perhaps. And so in this case, I think we should universalize I mean, they simplify, offer a very simplified sort of a story plot.
I see. Well, you know, there are different people having different views. We want you to listen to some of the sound bites coming from some so-called foreigners in China. They have been watching on and off from China's TV of this special TV drama, the story of Yanxi Palace. Let's listen in.
I have watched Yanxi Gonglu, a royal family and the relationships.
Many girlfriends and wives, that seems like a lot of work.
The expressions are much more strong.
A lot of eyebrow acting, if you know what I mean.
The way that they talk is very official sounding and very intense sounding.
He has to deal with all of that and then also run a country.
Concubines were trying to poison each other.
What they wear, their outfits are really fun. The long roby kind of things. Sometimes they wear the headpieces, right?
They were trying to get rid of one of the kids, or you know, one of them was pregnant, and trying to get rid of the baby or something like that. It's pretty crazy.
That's just some of the sound bites coming from foreign viewers here in China. They're quite versed, actually, about this TV drama, Ms. Liu.
Yes, I didn't know that, you know, there were some different opinions like that. It's quite enjoyable.
Well, to a large extent, it defeats the whole purpose. I mean, China is now being perceived as a very, very poisonous place, dangerous court, infighting all the way down from the above court and to the society. And so, in this sense, I think we need to change a little bit in terms of offering the best of the best. I mean, this kind of infighting regarding these young women could be extremely negative.
Well, others say, well, this is TV rating. For now, let's also go to Mike Bastian, who's on the phone with us. He's coming from Southampton University. He's been watching the TV dramas on and off. Professor, it's such a pleasure to talk to you on such a topic.
Yes, it is, and it's another incredible production.
Your thought?
Very, very. Hello?
Your thought, Professor?
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous success. I mean, I echo a lot of the reasons for the success that the other panelists have given. I would focus more on the heroine, Wei Yingluo, and the fact that she is Zhou Lingho, and I think she really is projecting a lot of the values, the lifestyles that younger generations are now living, where particularly females, where they don't assume that the traditional role of the female, childbearer, family-minded, that they're far more single-minded, determined, self-confident, but at the same time, I think another reason for the success is this fusion of tradition with modernity. It still reflects this emotional attachment to tradition and cultural heritage that the Chinese have. And I would say that I think this could and should be a success in different languages as well. So I think its international expansion has only just begun.
Interesting. On the other hand, you also see TV dramas from all over the world, Professor Bastian. If you look at the Downton Abbey and some of the others that have been a great success in the international market, is the Chinese TV drama dealing with, you know, so-called historical stories are really going international? That's a big question mark. Earlier, we have seen some examples, but not necessarily successful ones.
Well, certainly the opportunities there. I mean, my research has been telling me for many, many years that Chinese history, Chinese culture, ancient China, the dynasties, and the art and the literature that goes with that, so rich, that heritage, is of immense interest to the international public, and that's why China is such a large tourist destination. And Downton Abbey and other period dramas that you mentioned have been successful internationally, particularly America, because they play on British history and English history and tradition. So certainly the opportunity is there. The way it's produced, the way it's marketed, I think is very, very important. There needs to be very, very careful planning and supporting information around something like Yanxi Palace, which, if aired on its own, simply translated, might flop because it's not really couched in enough supporting detail. And if it was, I think it could be very, very popular in the UK.
Mike Bastian, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you're enjoying yourself watching those TV dramas. Talk to you later, Professor. Okay. I'll come back to both of you. We have less than a minute left. You know, what is really the inspiration this is providing us? At least it has a huge audience base, and it's somewhat helping us to understand better about Chinese culture in its own fictional way. Professor Tang, before we go.
Well, I think this, once again, it resonates with the contemporary lifestyle of the young people. I think it teaches them a lesson. I mean, sometimes you need to work very hard to survive and thrive in a modern and contemporary Chinese society. So work hard, but work hard in a very positive way. Do not fight. Do not actually poison, backstabbing your colleagues.
All right. And last word from you. 10 seconds if you can. We're running out of time.
Be bold and fight for what you want.
Thank you so much, Teng Jimeng and Liu Lu. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insights, CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. The weekend is up. Have a great one, everyone. Bye for now. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us.